The Challengeth training hall was crowded that evening. The smell of sweat, leather mats, and nervous laughter filled the air. Students had gathered not for a normal class but for a special guest who walked quietly into the building wearing simple clothes, almost blending into the crowd. It was Keanu Reeves. No cameras, no security. Just him, his calm walk, and his humble smile. Many of the students couldn't believe he was really there. Some whispered about his movies, stared in awe. But one black belt, a young man named Ryan, grinned with a mix of pride and mischief. Ryan was strong, confident, and sometimes arrogant. He had trained for years, and his black belt was the symbol of his dedication. But seeing Keanu Reeves standing, there quiet and ordinary, stirred something in him. He laughed loudly and said, "Hey Keanu, why don't you step onto the mat and spar with me? Let's see if you're as tough in real life as in the movies." His voice carried across the hall. The students gasped. Some thought it was a joke. Others felt a chill of discomfort. No one dared to challenge Ryan, but now he had thrown his words directly at Keanu. For a moment, silence ruled. Keanu did not answer right away. He looked at the mats, then at Ryan, then at the group of students watching nervously. His face carried no anger, no pride, only patience. Finally, in a calm voice, he said, "If that is what you want, then I will accept." His words were soft, but they cut through the air like a blade. The students leaned forward, their curiosity turning into suspense. Ryan smirked, waving his hands in the air, almost mocking. "Don't worry, I'll go easy on you." Laughter rippled from a few students, but it was uneasy laughter. Keanu removed his jacket, bowed respectfully to the master of the dojo, and stepped onto the mat. The master, an older man with wise eyes, studied him carefully, as if sensing that what was about to happen was no ordinary sparring match. As they squared off, Keanu's posture was strange. He did not look like a fighter ready to attack. Instead, he stood relaxed, his arms at his sides, almost as if he had no intention of defending himself. Ryan, full of energy and pride, bounced on his toes, throwing small jabs into the air too. "Warm up." The students began whispering again. One said, "This is going to be embarrassing." Another said, "Why did he even agree?" Then it began. Ryan lunged forward with speed. His punch cut through the air, but at the last second Keanu shifted his body so lightly it was as if the punch never existed. Ryan blinked, surprised. He tried again, faster, aiming a kick at Keanu's ribs. But Keanu moved with quiet precision, stepping aside, his face calm, almost meditative. It was not flashy, it was not dramatic. It was controlled, exact, and terrifying in its simplicity. Gasps filled the room as Ryan swung again and again, each move met not with violence, but with perfect timing and space. Keanu never struck back. He only avoided, redirected, and disarmed the attacks with such fluidity that Ryan began to sweat. His arrogance faded into frustration, then into fear. The black belt who believed he was untouchable now looked like a child chasing shadows. The silence in the hall grew heavier with every failed strike. The students were no longer laughing. Their eyes widened with respect and disbelief. Even the dojo master, who had seen countless fighters, now leaned forward. His hands clasped tightly. Finally, Ryan stopped, his chest rising and falling with sharp breaths. He stared at Keanu, who had not broken a sweat. Keanu bowed his head and said softly, "Fighting is not about pride or proving who is stronger. It is about respect, control, and knowing when not to use strength." The hall remained silent, but this silence was different now. It was no longer doubt, it was respect. The black belt who had asked for a fight as a joke was now humbled before everyone. The man they thought was only an actor stood revealed as something far greater. Yet, what no one knew was that this was only the beginning. Because that single spar would set off a chain of events none of them could have imagined. Ryan's pride, the students' whispers, and Keanu's unexpected depth would lead to moments of danger, courage, and revelations that would shock them. All and so the story began, not with a fight, but with a lesson written on a silent mat. Asterisk, the storm of Whispers Dojo was quiet after the spar. But it was not an ordinary silence. It was the kind of silence that held weight, pressing on every chest in the room. The students did not know what to say. Ryan, the proud black belt who had challenged Keanu, now stood red-faced, avoiding the eyes of his peers. Keanu bowed respectfully, again, and stepped off the mat. His calm presence so different from the storm of emotions swirling in everyone else, but whispers began almost immediately. Some students murmured about how he moved like water, like a ghost that could not be touched. Others whispered doubts, saying perhaps Ryan had not been serious enough, that maybe it was luck. Or perhaps Keanu had learned some tricks for his movies. The human heart often struggles to accept what it cannot easily explain. And that day, the hall became a battlefield, not of fists, but of opinions and pride. The master of the dojo finally raised his hand and spoke. What you saw today was not luck. It was discipline, humility, and years of understanding. His voice was calm but sharp. The room stilled. He looked at Ryan, who bowed his head in shame. Then his eyes rested on Keanu. You carry not only skill, but respect. For that, you have my honor. Keanu bowed to him and quietly replied, Thank you, master, but I came here not to prove anything. I came to learn. An international star, a man known across the world, standing there in humility, asking to be a student rather than a master. Many students felt a strange sting in their chest. Some felt inspired. Others felt uncomfortable because his humility reminded them of their own hidden arrogance. Later that evening, as the students left the hall, Ryan lingered outside. Anger twisted inside him, not just at Keanu, but at himself. He had been humiliated in front of everyone. His pride, built over years, had been torn apart in minutes. One of the younger students approached him timidly and said, Ryan, you were amazing. But he was something else. Ryan clenched his fists, his jaw tight. He muttered under his breath, He embarrassed me. I won't forget this. While Keanu walked home alone under the fading sunset, his thoughts were not about victory. They were about Ryan. He could see the young man's pride breaking, and he knew broken pride could lead either to growth or to destruction. Keanu had seen enough of life to know that sometimes the hardest fights were not with fists, but with the storms inside people's hearts. Days passed. Keanu returned to the dojo quietly for practice. He trained like any ordinary student, bowing, sweeping the mats, and helping others with small movements. Never once did he show arrogance. Never once did he use his fame for attention. Yet each time he entered, the whispers grew stronger. Some students respected him deeply. Others, influenced by Ryan, began to doubt him. He's just an actor, they whispered. He doesn't belong here. Ryan's pride could not rest. He trained harder, faster, more aggressively, telling himself he would one day defeat Keanu in front of everyone. He convinced a few close friends in the dojo to share his bitterness. The whispers spread like cracks in the walls. Respect turned to envy, envy to doubt, and doubt to quiet hostility. One night, after training ended, Ryan approached Keanu as he was leaving. The street outside was dimly lit, the air cool with a coming rain. You made me look weak, Ryan said coldly. You humiliated me in front of everyone. Do you think that makes you better than me? Keanu stopped and faced him. His voice was steady. I don't think I am better than you. I think we are both learning. Pride can blind us from seeing what is true. Ryan's eyes burned with anger. Don't talk to me about pride. I will prove to everyone you're nothing without the movies. Then he stormed off, leaving Keanu standing under the streetlight, the first drops of rain beginning to fall around him. That night, as the rain poured down, Keanu sat by his window, thinking. He had come to the dojo seeking peace, but he had stirred a storm in another man's heart. Did not want conflict, but he knew it was coming. Not a fight of fists, but a test of respect, patience, and kindness. What neither he nor Ryan knew was that the path they had just stepped on would soon pull in everyone around them. Students, teachers, even strangers. And the lessons of humility and strength would be tested in ways none of them were ready for. Because sometimes the real fight does not happen on the mat. It happens in the shadows of pride, in the heat of envy, and in the choices made when no one else is watching. The hidden testy storm between Keanu and Ryan did not fade. It grew quietly in the background of the dojo like a fire under ashes. On the surface, everything looked calm. Students bowed, trained, and followed their lessons. But beneath it all, there were lines being drawn. Some whispered that Keanu had shown great humility and real skill. Others whispered that Ryan had been made a fool, and that Keanu had no right to step into a place built on years of discipline. The dojo master. Sensei Hiroshi watched with silent eyes. He had trained warriors for decades and knew when invisible, battles were being fought. He saw the tension building. He saw how students glanced at Keanu and then quickly away. He saw how Ryan's movements grew sharper, faster, almost desperate, as though every punch was not against an opponent, but against his own wounded pride. One afternoon, after training, Sensei Hiroshi called Keanu into his small office. The room. It was lined with scrolls, old photographs, and a single wooden sword displayed on the wall. The master gestured for Keanu to sit. "Keanu," he said slowly, "you carry yourself with humility. But your presence here is not without consequence. Some of my students now train for pride, not growth. One heart in particular is wounded, and it is creating a storm among the others." Keanu bowed his head respectfully. "I know, master." See it in Ryan's eyes. I did not want to harm his spirit. I only wanted to practice and learn. The master studied him carefully. Sometimes life chooses us for tests we do not ask for. You may think you came here quietly, but perhaps you were brought here for a reason. His words hung heavy in the air. Then he leaned forward. "Would you accept a hidden test? One not of fame, not of show, but of truth?" Keanu raised his eyes. "What kind of test?" "A challenge," the master said. "Not one that proves strength, but one that reveals character. I want you to face Ryan. Again, not with fists, not with anger, but with patience and heart. The students must see that respect is greater than victory." Keanu felt the weight of those words. He nodded slowly. "If it will help him, I will do it." That evening, as the sun bled red across the horizon, the dojo gathered again. Hiroshi announced the challenge in front of everyone. Keanu and Ryan will face each other once more. But this is not about winning. It is about showing the meaning of respect. Watch carefully. Learn not only with your eyes, but with your hearts. The students buzzed with anticipation. Ryan's face lit with fire, his pride finally finding the chance for revenge. He smirked. As he stepped onto the mat, his black belt tied tight. Keanu entered calmly, bowing low before the master and before Ryan. The difference between the two men was striking. One carried the weight of pride. The other, the weight of humility. As the spar began, Ryan attacked quickly, his movements sharper than before. His punches snapped through the air, his kicks struck. Hard against the mat, he was faster, angrier, determined to break through. But Keanu once again moved like flowing water, redirecting, stepping aside, never striking back. His eyes were calm, his breathing even, but this time Ryan grew more reckless. His anger boiled. He shouted, "Mid-attack, fight me! Stop running!" His fists slammed harder, his body dripping sweat. Keanu could feel the heat of his desperation. The students sat in silence, their eyes wide. Then, in one sudden moment, Ryan lunged wildly, and his balance broke. His legs slipped on the mat, and he stumbled forward, falling hard. Gasps filled the room. He lay there, humiliated again, his face pressed against the mat. Everyone waited to see what Keanu would do. Keanu stepped forward slowly. Instead of striking, instead of claiming victory, he reached out his hand. The hall froze. His hand hovered. In the air, steady, patient, waiting, Ryan looked up, his face red with rage and shame. His pride screamed at him to reject the hand. But his body was tired, his heart breaking. In that long silence, the choice became heavier than any fight. Finally trembling, Ryan reached up and took Keanu's hand. Keanu pulled him gently to his feet and bowed to him with deep respect. The hall erupted into stunned silence. Then, slowly, one by one, the students began to clap. It was not the applause of victory. It was the applause of understanding. Sensei Hiroshi's voice broke through the sound. This is the lesson. Strength is nothing without respect. Victory means nothing without humility. Ryan's eyes watered, though he tried to hide it. For the first time, he saw not a rival, not an actor, but a man who had come to teach him something he never expected. But outside the dojo, it's unseen. Another figure had been watching through the glass doors, a stranger with a scar across his cheek. Someone none of them knew. His eyes were cold, and his smile carried danger. What Keanu and Ryan didn't realize was that their story was about to take a darker turn. The shadow at the door of the dojo emptied slowly that night. The sound of footsteps fading into the quiet street outside. Keanu stayed behind to help sweep the mats, moving with the same calm patience he had shown during the spar. Ryan lingered in the corner, his pride wounded, but his heart beginning to open. He still struggled to accept what had happened, but deep down, he felt a strange respect growing for the man he once mocked. Sensei Hiroshi locked the scrolls in his office and watched the two men quietly. His old eyes saw something shifting, something rare. Change begins when we are humbled, he whispered to himself. But outside, across the street, the stranger with the scar leaned against a lamppost, his coat collar pulled high. His eyes tracked Keanu's every move. There was something unsettling in his stare, like he had been waiting for this moment for a long time. When the lights of the dojo went out, the stranger melted into the darkness. The next day, the dojo buzzed with energy. Students spoke in hushed voices about what they had said. Keanu refusing to humiliate Ryan, Keanu offering his hand instead of a strike. Some said it was the truest lesson they had ever witnessed. Others still clung to doubt, whispering that maybe it was staged, maybe it was all performance. Ryan kept silent, but inside his heart was restless. He trained harder, but his movements were no longer fueled only by pride. They were fueled by a quiet need to understand himself. He replayed Keanu's calm face in his mind, the steady hand reaching down to lift him up. It haunted him in ways he could not explain. That evening, as Ryan walked home from the dojo, he felt a presence behind him. The streets were dimly lit, the rain from earlier leaving the pavement wet and shining under the lamps. Ryan turned, and there he was, the scarred man. "You're Ryan, aren't you?" The stranger's voice was low, rough, like gravel. Ryan stepped back cautiously. "Who are you?" The stranger smiled without warmth. "Someone who's been watching. I saw what happened with that actor in the dojo. You were humiliated. Twice. Doesn't that burn inside you?" Ryan stiffened. "That's none of your business." The stranger stepped closer. "Oh, it is my business, 'cause I can give you what you want. I can show you how to truly defeat him, how to make him fall in front of everyone." Ryan's fists clenched. His pride flared, but so did a small voice of doubt in his chest. "Why would you help me?" The stranger's smile widened. "Let's just say I have my own reasons. Keanu is not who you think he is. And if he stays, he will take everything from you." His words slithered into Ryan's ears, sharp and poisonous. Before Ryan could answer, footsteps approached. Keanu appeared from the shadows, carrying a simple bag. He stopped when he saw them. His eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in recognition. "You," Keanu said softly, his voice calm but heavy. The scarred man chuckled darkly. "So you remember me?" Ryan looked between them, confusion flooding his face. "You know him?" Keanu's silence said more than words. "Duh." His jaw tightened. His body tensed. The scarred man stepped back into the darkness. "This isn't over," he said, his voice like a threat carved into stone. Then he vanished into the night. Ryan stared at Keanu, demanding answers. "Who was that? What does he want with you?" "With us?" Keanu's eyes lowered. His calm voice returned, but there was weight behind it now. "He is someone from my past, someone who carries anger like a blade. And if he has returned, then all of us may be in danger." The tension in the air thickened. For the first time, Ryan saw fear not in Keanu's movements, but in the shadow that followed him. The dojo, the lessons, the pride and humility. of it was about to collide with something darker, something far more dangerous than a simple fight. Because sometimes the enemies we face are not just in front of us. Sometimes they come from the past, carrying unfinished battles that refuse to stay buried. The past unmasked head dojo felt different after that night. The students trained as usual, but whispers carried heavier tones. Some spoke of the scarred stranger seen outside. Others noticed the way Keanu's eyes sometimes drifted to the door, as though waiting for a storm to walk in. Ryan trained harder, but his thoughts were clouded with questions. Who was that man? Why did Keanu look at him with such recognition? Finally, unable to hold it in, Ryan confronted Keanu during a quiet moment after practice. You need to tell me the truth, he said firmly. Who was he? Why did he say you remembered him? Keanu paused, folding the mats neatly before answering. His voice was calm, but his words carried weight. His name is Victor. Years ago, before you knew me as an actor, I spent time in places where fighting was not for sport, not for pride, but for survival. Victor was there too. We were both young, both angry and both hungry to prove ourselves. But while I walked away from that world, he stayed in it. And he never forgave me for leaving. Ryan frowned. So he was a fighter. Keanu nodded. A fighter, yes. But more than that, he was a man who believed strength meant everything. To him, respect was weakness. Kindness was weakness. Humility was weakness. I was once close to becoming like him. I turned away. And now, he carries that scar as a reminder of the day I refused to finish a fight with him. The memory weighed heavy in Keanu's chest. He could still see it, the underground. Ring, the crowd shouting, Victor bleeding but refusing to fall. Keanu had the chance to end it, to claim victory in front of all. But instead, he walked away. He bowed to Victor, refusing to strike the final blow. The crowd had mocked Victor, calling him weak, calling him broken. And from that moment, Victor's hatred for Keanu was carved deeper than the scar on his cheek. Ryan listened, his pride softening with every word. So that's why he's here. He wants revenge. Keanu's eyes darkened. Not just revenge. Men like Victor don't just fight one person. They destroy everything around them. He will try to use anger, pride, and fear to break this dojo, to turn you against each other. If we let him, the true spirit of this place will be lost. As if summoned by those words, Victor returned days later, not inside, but waiting outside the dojo gates. He spoke to students as they left, whispering in their ears, offering them promises of power. Some ignored him, unsettled by his cold stare. But others, curious and restless, lingered too long. Rumors began to spread. Victor was challenging fighters at a hidden gym across town, offering money and pride to anyone who could last against him. Some students, hungry to prove themselves, started slipping away at night to watch or even participate. The dojo's unity began to crack. Sensei Hiroshi felt the shift. His old heart ached as he saw discipline turning into arrogance, respect, turning into competition. One evening, he called Keanu and Ryan into his office. His voice was firm, though his face showed weariness. Victor is poisoning the spirit of this dojo. Cannot ignore him any longer. But this is not about beating him in a fight. It is about protecting the hearts of those who train here. Ryan clenched his fists. Then let me face him. I won't. Let him tear this place apart. Keanu shook his head. Facing Victor in anger will only feed his purpose. I know him, Ryan. He will use your pride against you. This is not your burden to carry. Sensei Hiroshi looked at Keanu. And you? Will you carry it? Keanu's silence was heavy. His past had followed him here, and he knew running was no longer possible. Finally he nodded, if facing him. We'll bring peace to this dojo? Then I will. The students gathered the next day, sensing something was coming. Whispers spread quickly. Keanu was going to face the scarred stranger. Some cheered, hungry for spectacle. Others feared the outcome. Ryan stood among them, torn between pride and loyalty, knowing this battle was no longer about humiliation or respect. It was about survival of something greater than themselves. As night fell, the dojo lights glowed against the dark streets. Victor appeared at the door, his eyes cold, his presence heavy. The room grew tense as he stepped onto the mat, his scar catching the light. Keanu followed, calm, steady, but carrying the weight of years on his shoulders. The final confrontation was no longer about Ryan's pride or the whispers of students. It was about the spirit of respect versus the hunger of destruction. And as the two men bowed, the air itself seemed to hold its breath, because everyone knew whatever happened next would change everything. The final both dojo floor felt colder that night. Even though the air was thick with heat, the students circled the mat, their eyes fixed on the two men who stood at its center. On one side, Victor, his scar running like a mark of fire across his cheek, his body strong, coiled with rage. On the other, Keanu, calm and steady, his face quiet, his breathing even. No one spoke. Even Sensei Hiroshi remained silent, his hands folded in front of him. He knew this was not just a fight. It was a battle of spirits, a lesson that would decide the heart of every student in the room. Victor smirked, his voice sharp like broken glass. You walked away once. You humiliated me. Tonight you don't walk away. Tonight I finish. You started. Keanu bowed, his eyes never leaving Victor. Tonight I will not fight you with anger. I will fight you with respect. Victor laughed cruelly, stepping forward, his fists snapping like whips. The first strike came fast, but Keanu slipped aside, his movements precise, graceful. Victor attacked again, harder, angrier, each blow carrying years of hate. Keanu blocked, dodged, and redirected, his body moving like water, never once striking. Back! The students gasped. Some cheered Victor's ferocity. Others began to see something deeper. How Keanu's calm seemed to weaken Victor's strength. How his refusal to fight with rage turned Victor's fury into desperation. But Victor would not stop. He roared, unleashing a storm of punches and kicks. One strike landed, grazing Keanu's jaw. The crowd gasped louder. Blood touched Keanu's lip, but his eyes remained steady. He did not answer violence with violence. Instead, he breathed deeply and whispered, just loud enough for Victor to hear, "You are still fighting ghosts." Victor froze for a second, his rage faltering. Keanu moved then not with a punch, but with a sweep, guiding Victor's momentum until the scarred man crashed onto the mat. The dojo shook with the impact, but instead of finishing him, Keanu stepped back. He bowed deeply, his voice carrying through the silent hall. I will not destroy you, not because I cannot, but because respect is greater than revenge. Hall was silent. Victor lay on the mat, breathing hard, his pride broken. He looked up at Keanu, expecting mockery, expecting a strike, expecting humiliation. Instead, he saw the same hand Keanu had once offered Ryan, steady, patient, waiting. The scarred man trembled, his hatred colliding with something he had not felt in years. Mercy. His chest rose and fell with ragged breaths, his fists unclenched. Finally, though his pride burned, Victor reached out and took Keanu's hand. Keanu lifted him gently to his feet. The dojo erupted in applause, not wild, not mocking. It was slow, respectful, like the sound of hearts awakening. Students bowed. Deeply, tears in some of their eyes. Ryan stood frozen, his throat tight, realizing at last what strength truly meant. Sensei Hiroshi's voice filled the hall. This is the true lesson. Strength is not to break others, but to lift them. Tonight, you have all seen it. Keanu bowed. To the master, then to Victor, then to every student in the room. His voice was calm, yet it carried through every heart. Fighting without respect is emptiness. Winning without kindness is loss. Remember this. Victor lowered his head, humbled. Ryan stepped forward, tears glistening. I mocked you once, but you've shown me more than I ever learned in years of training. I am sorry. Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder. Growth begins when we admit what we were and choose what we will become. That night, as the dojo lights dimmed, the students left not with the thrill of a fight, but with a lesson that would stay with them forever. They had witnessed something greater than victory. They had witnessed the power of humility, the courage of kindness, and the strength of respect. And as Keanu walked alone into the night, the city quiet around him, his heart was at peace. He had faced his past, healed a wound, and left behind a truth that would live long after the applause faded. Because sometimes the greatest warrior is not the one who wins the fight, but the one who refuses to let hate win his heart.